Welcome, everyone, to the Ghost Helper podcast. I'm your host, Tina Erwin, and the Ghost Helper podcast is where we discuss everything paranormal because the paranormal is our normal. My guest today is Chloe Scolaro, and she and I met some time ago, and we've done several shows together. So, good morning, Chloe. Welcome. Can you tell everybody a little bit about how we connected, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Tina. We connected. I was a big fan of your books, and I was kind of coming into my own spiritual abilities, and they were a huge help to me, and then we connected that way.
Well, that is super cool. And then when I started the Ghost Helper podcast, I thought, it's going to be a lot of fun to do a show with her. I think we'll have a really good time. So we're both military people, so we also have that in common.
Yep. It's hard to find people that can do what we can do, and we're in the military, so.
Well, I think there are far more, shall we say, psychic people in the military than we might realize. Mm-hmm. They just don't advertise it, but I met them over 20 years, men and women. So I'm sure you've met more than your share too.
I have.
And kind of whisper is in hushed tones. So
exactly.
So our topic today is reincarnation and soul evolution and the peripheral little things like karma that go with that. So do you want to start out with a question?
Sure. I think that a good question would be reincarnation. Geez, what the heck is it?
Okay. Well, reincarnation is the concept that we don't live one life, die, and become compost, and that's it. Mm-hmm. It's the concept that we live life after life to gain experiences on our path of soul evolution. And actually wrote a book on that. Soul evolution, past lives, and karmic ties. What a concept.
Very good.
And with that concept that we come back for life after life, it begins to explain all kinds of things. And it's also what Christ meant by life everlasting. He didn't say death everlasting. The whole point was that you rise into the higher realms, you figure out what's going on, and you come back and you have a body. I mean, what a waste it would be for a soul who only lives a few hours, dies at birth. But you don't need 100 experience-filled years every lifetime either. Sometimes you only need a few. That's why people in places and situations are familiar. So does that make sense?
It does. I mean, obviously, I read your book. I have a good background, but I think for people who don't really have a lot of experience in this realm, reincarnation can be like a taboo subject. When they hear reincarnation, they don't necessarily, I don't think, equate it to Christianity or any of the major mainstream religions because, I mean, you talk about Christ everlasting, but he doesn't really talk about the coming back into a new body, to my knowledge at least. So I think sometimes it can be a hard concept for people. And something
I think that's true.
Yeah. Something I heard my grandma's 87 years old, and every time I talk to her, she keeps joking about still being alive. But she always says, because I asked her, what do you think happens to us when we die? And she said, I don't know. Nobody's ever come back to tell us. And so I don't think it's a very recognized phenomenon that we do, in fact, come back.
It isn't a recognized phenomenon, I would suggest, in Western culture.
Right.
But in other spiritual traditions, it's a well-established fact for the majority of the world. It's just Western cultures don't necessarily see that. And reincarnation had been in the Bible for a very long time, but it was consciously removed. Mm-hmm. And there's some controversy about the Council of Nicaea and the removal of reincarnation. And so for whatever reason it was there, it was removed because imagine that you could be recognized for the scoundrel you were in that past life. Well, maybe somebody didn't want to be recognized, so they took it out. I mean, we know that the Bible has been edited for thousands of years. And we also know that nothing about Christ was written down until 200 years after his death. So people didn't live 200 years during the time of Christ. They were lucky to live 50 or 60 years. That was an old man. I mean, when Ramses II died, he was 65 years old. That was considered ancient. So I think they did the best they could, but most people weren't literate. So having a lot of written material would have been difficult. So getting back to the concepts itself, when you study the Tibetan concepts that we come back and we need the experiences with people, places, and things, maybe we didn't quite get it right the last time. And maybe right is not the best choice of words. I would say
subjective.
Maybe we would like to have another opportunity to make a different choice.
Right.
I know there's a lot of people say, oh, you only live once. But what if you don't? What if you come back again and again? Would that change your frame of reference in how you live your life? Knowing that every moment, every word, you're creating a karmic impact. And whether it's a balance, it goes in your karmic bank account for something positive or something negative or something somewhere in between. If we were to have that concept and we lived our lives knowing that we're going to come back, perhaps and see these people, places, and things again, would we make different choices?
Right.
So that's a little bit about, it's elegantly simple and complicated all at the same time.
Right. Could you talk a little bit about the time between reincarnating and, yeah, I guess just the time in between when we die and when we come back, and then also, there was a second part to this question. I can't remember what it was. I guess it'll come to me.
Well, I might address it. So see if I hit that button for you. That's an excellent question. And I do past life regressions for people. I don't even know how many I've done. But one time we went into this woman's life between lives. It was so fascinating. She had conscious memory of 25 lives. I only remember 7.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot, but they were significant lives. She remembered 25. And in this regression, which turned out to not be exactly that, we went to the time between lifetimes. And what was so fascinating, it only ever happened one time. She was sitting down at what I would term a table, this beautiful, gorgeous table in this light-filled room with these counselors of divine wisdom. And as she was sitting down talking to them, she was getting an understanding of all the things that happened in her previous lives and where they were putting her, or what position they were putting her in lives to come. And that the actions she was taking in her current life, because we were actually, it was amazing. We're kind of getting a counseling session while she was living this life. Again, it's never happened before or since.
Almost kind of like two things were happening at the same time, but in different time dimensions. Because we always talk about how time is a construct. It's just subjective. So almost like two things were happening live at the same time.
That's exactly right. But thank you for that clarification. That's exactly what was happening. And they explained to her that every decision she was making was having a massive influence, like an echo when you put out a sound or you drop a pebble in a pool. It's going to impact all your future lives and your entire karmic path. They can't tell you what decisions to make.
Right.
They can show you the ramifications of past decisions because that is already fact. That's already part of your Akashic record. But they cannot tell you what to do in the future because they cannot deny free will, even between lifetimes, even in the higher realms. I mean, there are people who die. Robert J. Grant wrote a book about this, and he talked about people who are shown their angels that are trying to take them to different levels of the higher realms, and they were so focused on a narrow belief system they would scream in horror when the angels came toward them because they didn't have a broader view of the higher realms or the heaven world. So her understanding was such that when she died, she knew to look for an angel in the light, and she went into the higher realms based on what her frequency was and the karma she'd created in that lifetime. And when she was sitting down with them, she gathered the love and the energy that was surrounding her. There's no judgment. There's no hell and fire and damnation. It's peaceful. You're sitting down at a table with these amazing, almost indescribable beings, and they're helping you to gain insight as you look into the future. So when we finished with that experience, because it wasn't exactly a regression, we called it a progression, she said she really had a much better understanding about how she was going to live the rest of her life because she had that moment of insight. And so did I. I'm not sitting here in a vacuum. I'm observing and watching, and I'm being educated as well. When you do the kind of crazy work that I do, you're getting an education every single day. Even this conversation, the questions you're asking, and how we're interacting I'm always being educated. Because if you think you have all the answers and you know it all, what are you here for?
Right.
Well, that's a little bit about, so between lifetimes, you can sit down with the beings. If you have led a particularly arduous, horrific life, and you make it into the higher realms, which is the whole point of the crossing over prayer in the crossing over prayer book, excuse me, you don't come back right away because you have to rest. There's a place in the higher realms called the Love and Charity Hospital of the Superior Astral Realm. That's a funny name, but that's what it's called. And they give you a variety of types of healing on multiple levels. They're not healing a physical body because that turned to dust. They're healing a mental, emotional, spiritual body, part of you, and allowing you that rest. This is why crossing over or helping another soul to cross over is a massively powerful spiritual act, because you're enabling that soul to finally get help, which they may not have gotten in lifetimes. So your question is actually a two-part question. First part is, what happens between lifetimes if you cross over? And they sit down with you, they give you healing, they help you understand what happened. Why did I have this father who beat me? Why was I divorced? Why did I have such a successful life? Why did I die at 3 months or 6 years or 100 years? They can help you understand those things. It's so wonderful. But if you don't cross over, you can reincarnate from the fourth dimension. You can come in and you still have the sooty darkness. There's no restoration of your soul, which is described in the 23rd Psalm. As you cross over, and you meet the light of God, he restoreth my soul. That means something. They're not just words in a psalm in the Bible. They mean something. There's a power there. And when you stay in the third dimension because you don't know you're dead, You have no idea what to do when death comes. You're terrified because you led a horrendous life. You see really dark beings, and you have no idea you should ask an angel to help you. And the living can't hear you. And it's like, you're dead now. And they walk away. And you're going, wait. I'm sorry. I didn't get the memo on what to do next. Is there an email or a text that I missed? Because I don't know where I'm supposed to go next.
Right. Check your spam folder.
Yeah, I mean, was I supposed to know this? I went to church, 5 days a week, twice on Sunday, and I don't remember them telling me, okay, nobody can see you, nobody can feel you, you're dead now. I hope that you're doing okay. But dude, I'm not okay. Help me. And now people go, oh my God, this person's haunting me and I'm being cursed. No. That
they need help.
They just need some help. And so it can go a couple of ways. What happens between lifetimes? Some people come back and the trauma of a lifetime is so staggering. It's like they come back completely wounded. There's another factor, and it's like, why are there so many narcissists? Do you hear people say that?
Oh yeah, that's a buzzword these days. Even sometimes it's the facts, and sometimes it's just a word people have clung on to. I'm sure you experienced that.
Yeah, that's what a lot of divorces come from. One party or the other seems to be married to a narcissist. So you have, when you're looking at mental challenges, you have a personality disorder can be a borderline personality disorder. I learned that a psychiatrist can only have 1 or 2 borderline personalities in their practice ever at a time, because a borderline personality drives the psychiatrist or the psychologist crazy.
I believe it.
They are so difficult, and they absolutely suck you dry. There is a narcissistic personality disorder, which is all about them, and they will also suck you dry. There's an immature personality disorder, and it's like they are a chronically, 5-year-old spoiled child in an adult body. And then there are other degrees of personality disorders. You can have an overlay of several of them. You can also have an overlay of a serious psychiatric condition like paranoia, schizophrenia, a sociopath personality, paired with or overlaid with personality disorders. And it's kind of an astounding thought when you think about it, that you could have this many different kinds of things. So how does that happen? If each lifetime one you don't cross over, then, and you've done some bad things, but maybe you were a petty thief, or you were a shoplifter, or you flaunted all the rules, a little bit of your soul is shaved off that lifetime. Well, what happens is, life after life of pieces of your soul being shaved off, you go down the rungs of personality disorder till you get to serious psychopathy. And then you have people who are completely psychotic. And then you have people who appear completely normal, and they want to basically commit mass murder, depopulate the world, and say, and do it with a smile on their face. And so they have no conscience. Sociopath can also be psychotic, which is why they can kill, like the Jeffrey Dahmers and the Richard Specks and all the different serial killers we've seen over the years, or the mass murderers on other levels. They have no conscience. And when you're affecting the brain in a variety of ways, whether it's with drugs or alcohol or the variety of abuses that can happen to a soul, when those things happen, it affects elements of the brain, especially when a person is horrendously deprived of touching, hugging, loving, and care as a child. It's like part of them starts dying part of the brain starts dying in infancy. They saw this in the orphanages in Bulgaria and Yugoslavia under the reign of Stalin and all these other horrendous dictators. These children never received any love, and they were easy to program and commit horrendous crimes. They had no conscience.
Right.
Well, those souls come back. They're not crossing over. No one's going to cross them over. Why? They're bad. They should go to hell. Which is why I always cross over murderers when I, have that unusual opportunity.
Right. Do you feel like there are, I don't know, because we can't theorize what the percentage of souls on Earth came from the fourth dimension and came from the higher realms. But would you say that you've seen an uptick in people reincarnating from the fourth dimension than from the higher realms in most recent years?
I think that's a hard call for me to make.
Yeah, it's not our place to say that, but
it's a very, very interesting question. What I would say is that having crossed, I'll give you an answer from a different direction. Once I started crossing over larger numbers of people, you could begin to see that there were, I don't know how else to describe it, but pockets of, I call them blister dimensions of the fourth dimension, which it's so vast, there's no description for it. And it was so dark. And you find these blister dimensions with these certain personality types or this group of people that were in this together. And I don't know what they did. I don't know if they committed atrocities or the atrocities were committed upon them. I don't know that. My job is not to judge, it's to cross them over. Well, I'm crossing over thousands of people from just one little blister dimension. And I've done this for 30 years. That's a lot of souls. And sometimes the numbers were so massive over time, because if part of your soul is shaved off, where does that part go? It stays in the fourth dimension. That's why psychiatry is so difficult, because you aren't ever curing anyone. This is why the work of Brian Weiss, who is a psychiatrist, and he wrote the book Many Lives, Many Masters, was so revolutionary, especially for the field of psychology and psychiatry, because when he did past life regressions, court appointed with this woman, and she was in a horrendous state, it took several years, but by healing each of the lifetimes that came forward and listening to the beings in the higher realms who were speaking to him, he brought her out of all of the psychopathy in this lifetime. And she was restored to wholeness as a soul in a mortal body. That is highly unusual. It's like when I'm working with someone, I don't go back and do past life regressions if I don't have to. I'm trying to heal what is happening in this lifetime. But if I can see that something's happened in a past life, then I'm absolutely going to go back and fix that, which I've done many, many times. And some of the things that happen to people that I unfortunately was able to see are of such unspeakable violence that some of it just never leaves you. And I would say some of the people, I'll just give a group as an example. And they were the people who were tortured by the Inquisition for hundreds of years. The Inquisition had absolute power, which is part of basically the Inquisition was a satanic cult. Let's just call it what it was. All these people had the power of life and death, and you could be tortured and punished for your beliefs. Let us hope, wink, wink, that doesn't ever happen again. But it happened in those times. And thank God Philip II of Spain and the Spanish Armada, what was that, 1582, what failed, because otherwise, as Queen Elizabeth I said, the belly of the beast will destroy England, and the massacre of Christian, of Protestant and Catholic will be beyond imagination. What a horrendous thing is coming.
Right.
And so those souls have been traumatized to this day, and it has affected them to this day. It's why a lot of new age people really shy away from religion, or people with psychic ability who have been tortured or murdered in past lives are terrified to let anybody know that they have any psychic ability at all. And that's true for me. I was drowned as a witch in the 1600s. And so when I published my first book, The Lightworker's Guide to Healing Grief, and my publisher was the Edgar Cayce Center in Virginia Beach, the ARE.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do a YouTube video, and they were interviewing me about this book, and I was staying with my sister, and I was going to be on camera, and I would be visible and public, and I had a panic attack. And I remember my sister saying to me, "It's not the 16th century. You're going to be okay. They're not going to torture you this time."
Right. They can't drown you. That's illegal.
That is murder. So you're going to be okay. And it was one of the hardest things I've had to do, is to walk into that studio, and you kind of put yourself out there, which is what I
your soul. Yeah.
You're vulnerable. And what you have to decide is, what's the greatest good? Is the opportunity to help someone who hasn't felt like they were understood before.
Right. I have a couple questions for you based off of everything you've just said.
Okay.
I want to make sure I heard you correct, because maybe I did not. But when you were talking about shaving off pieces of your soul and having no conscience, you said, where does that go? Where does that part that was shaved off go? And you said it stays in the fourth dimension. Are you saying that we get split almost? That parts of us come back and parts of us stay?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
I've never heard that before.
I know, I'm a little odd here.
that's like, wow.
Because it's the only way you can explain serial killers. This is the only way you can explain this progression. How does somebody come in a serial killer? Narcissists are born. Sociopaths, varying levels of mental illness happen. Schizophrenia, borderline personality, which is a chemical imbalance in the brain. But how does that start? And so those pieces that are shaved off between lifetimes, because the person committed karma, they committed an act that wasn't a good thing, so they took themselves down that lower road, which is why I'm always beating the raise your frequency drum. And once they went down that road, now they're vulnerable to the dark side.
So when the soul splits and you reincarnate and you have all these mental issues, does the part of your soul that stayed behind turn into like a lower realm intelligence or something?
No, lower realm intelligences are a completely separate form of being.
They were never.
Energy that was shaved off is used as fuel for the dark intelligences.
Okay.
In the lower astral realm, they have to eat something. So then, now that this is shaved off, you have a puppet master.
So something is controlling you in this dimension from the fourth dimension using the part of you that was shaved off.
Correct.
That's insane.
But look at the logic of it. When you think about the logic of this, you ask yourself, how is somebody born schizophrenic? How does that happen? And they go, well, it's hereditary, it's genes. Not necessarily. Many a family who has they have 3 or 4 kids, and everybody's getting along, but you always have this one kid. And that kid, nobody understood them. They didn't fit in. They weren't able to contribute or behave in the same way as everyone else. There was something wrong. And the schizophrenia or whatever psychopathy was happening with them, they were controlled. And in fact, there are some families that literally had to lock their 4 and 5-year-olds in bed at night because they'd wake up and the kid has a butcher knife over them.
Traumatic.
Yeah. I've seen, there are several interesting shows that talk about this. One was just chilling. It's called A Little Girl Named Kat. And she was adopted from a Bulgarian orphanage. She was 4 or 5 years old. She was absolutely murderous from the day she came into their lives. It's not like, you can return, a jar of pickles because you didn't like them. And you got this kid. And they went through virtually every penny they had trying to help this child. But she was so psychotic and murderous. She was criminally insane from did it happen because she didn't receive any love or care? She came in this way. And they've finally come to this conclusion. They finally come to the conclusion that people come in this way. It may or may not be hereditary. And people say, well, if it's hereditary, yes. But a lot of time when people say something's hereditary because so-and-so's relatives, that's a group karmic thing. Maybe that was you in another life and you just came back. You didn't inherit it. You just returned with it. You didn't learn anything because you didn't cross over. This is a really different view of reincarnation, but I think it's a really important set of questions to ask.
I agree. So talking about group stuff really quick, I kind of want to touch on the topic of reincarnating and having soul contracts and kind of planning out your life and planning the people you're going to meet before you come in. Can we touch on that a little bit? And how like families work and how, your mother could be your mother in this life, but she's your brother in the next one, or maybe you were her mother in a past life. How all that kind of works.
There was a fascinating documentary about a little town in North Carolina. And this group of researchers wanted to see if people reincarnated because they believed in this, reincarnated and came back to the same town. Were they descendants and they'd lived there for, 200 years. It's not the West, so it could be 200 or even 300 years old if they came over in the 1600s. Okay. But these people were just looking to see if they died in the Civil War and they came back. I mean, it was somewhat of a simple research concept. But what happened blew them away. They didn't go back just one lifetime. And they were also astounded that so many members of the town actually were willing to participate because it's a very Christian community for whom many do not subscribe to the concept of reincarnation.
Right.
But for some reason, these people had an understanding because not only did everyone know each other, they knew they had known each other before. They were so familiar with each other. And so when this research went back, what they saw is they had been each other's mother, brother, sister, aunt, grandparent, and they all just kept having a group incarnation in that particular area. And they just swap roles over and over. And they knew each other. And they had learned how to work through problems together. So it was ironic. And yes, they lived through the Civil War together, and some of them died in the Civil War. And they, when I was born, we hadn't been out of the Civil War for 100 years yet. That's how the Civil War wasn't that long ago. So that reincarnation may or may not have been able to happen, but apparently it was, because so many young boys died in like 1860 when the Civil War started. And so many of them came back, died in World War I or died in World War II. So somebody's always dying in this war, and they wanted to have a life together. So you could see there were opportunities. So this research went on for a while, and the people who participated felt this peacefulness, knowing that death isn't the end and they'll see each other again. It was extremely healing, and it provided each of them with a great deal of peace.
I bet.
And it was fascinating. And so many times there is an enormous awareness that you come in with, that you just know. I knew with one of my brothers that he and I had life after life after life together. We went all the way back to Atlantis, and both of us knew it. And we'd had a life in Italy together, and he was my father, and my husband was one of his ship captains. And I mean, I've known my husband for, I don't know, for millennia. And one of us always died. So this was the first life we could have a whole life together. And good God, this man's been going to sea life after life. Finally, he's done. I think he's done going to sea. Kind of amazing. So I'm trying to decide, did I get off topic, or am I?
Sorry, I was about to make a joke. Maybe in his next life he'll come back as a boat. But that's a perfect segue into my next question about reincarnation, which was, can people come back as, maybe not inanimate objects because that's a little bit silly, but animals? You know, people make jokes and say, oh, this is my spirit animal, or in my next life I want to come back as a ladybug. Is that a real thing? Do people come back as other species when they reincarnate?
The animal kingdom has its own soul evolution path, starting out with small creatures and then evolving to the higher primates and the apex predators. Human beings can never reincarnate as animals. Animals can reincarnate, and you do see this with dogs especially. And I have a friend who had a ragdoll kitty named Maggie. It's the sweetest animal. And the cat, lived a long time. The cat died, and so she got another cat, and it was virtually identical to the cat who just died. And she got her as a kitten. A couple months had passed. She got this kitten, and she said, "I have Maggie again. She comes to that name, every single characteristic. She does every single thing that the other cat did. I think I have my cat back." And she was just beaming and glowing that she had that. And there's so much case study of people's animals coming back and seeking out an owner, or learning, or having, some animals are just freaking really smart, like Dobermans and Weimaraners. And I'm not a dog person, but I know some of these animals are just scary smart.
Right.
And some are, and yes, there is breeding done for certain breeds, but some animals are just really, really, really smart. And elephants, look at the evolution of an elephant and the amount of emotion and sensitivity, or the primates. I think what I'm trying to say is that when we're looking at this evolution, animals evolve. And this discussion is also in the Urantia book, which is the discussion. I mentioned this book many times. It's how God organizes the universe. And they explain that everything in the animal kingdom stays in the animal kingdom. Everything in the mortal realm of humanity stays within that mortal realm. Angels are in their own their own group. So human beings can't become angels. Angels don't become human. They're not, punished by being human now.
Right.
Angels can help human beings, but they can never be humans. And even though you want to think that your sweet child has now become an angel, that doesn't happen, unfortunately or fortunately. But they doesn't say they can't help the angels. And there are many a child I absolutely happen to know personally who do work with the higher realms when they died at a very young age. And that was the purpose of their death, was they were going on to help the angels, because that soul had evolved to that point. They didn't need 100 years. They only needed 6 years.
That's a good thing for me to ask this on top of it. So we talk about our reincarnation, we come back over and over and over again, but do we ever just stop coming back? Do we ever reach that point? And when we do, obviously we can't become angels, but we can become souls that assist alongside and don't have to come back again? Or how does that work?
This is also in the Urantia book, and we have a path of soul evolution, and it's thousands and thousands of years and incarnations.
Mm-hmm.
And as you evolve, you grow, hopefully, in wisdom. And you hear a lot of New Age people say, "Oh, I just know this is my last life because I'm not coming back to this."
I've heard that.
I'm just not coming. I hate these people.
This is my last life. Okay.
This is my last life. I'm sorry. You don't get to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. Unfortunately, karma decides that. Because if it were your last life, you would have a grief and a sadness that you wouldn't be able to describe to another person, because you would have reached a level where your love and compassion for humanity is so great. The thought of leaving your family, perhaps your spouse, your children, all of the family members, your friends, the goodness that you only see in people, you only see their goodness, and you're not judging what's happened to them. The thought of leaving them, of not ever being able to be of service to them, would cause a wave of grief to hit you. Because once you have achieved a level of understanding and loving humanity, then you don't see yourself as separate. You see them in a totality. Well, once a soul gets to this level and they cross over, there is the potential for them to come back, but there's also the potential for the higher realms to decide this soul cannot come back. They're now going to join what's called the core of the final lighters. And what this means is that you don't reincarnate on this planet anymore. You join this core and you receive training as a soul. And then you're given whatever your particular specialty is. Maybe it's medicine, maybe it's botany. You either work on other worlds, you can work on other realms. In my father's house are many mansions and many astounding opportunities that are available once you don't reincarnate anymore. You're not sitting on a cloud. Because frankly, I don't know about you, but I'd just be bored to insanity.
Oh yeah, fishing off the side of the cloud like the DreamWorks guy on the on the movies.
It's adorable, but it's not realistic.
Right.
Once you join this core, they're looking at, what is maybe your longest term soul mission? What are the wonderful things you would like to explore? It's an opportunity that is beyond physical description that awaits you. But to get to that exalted point, and this isn't about ego, I think that may be one of the most critical things. It is about the humility of seeing yourself as the same as other people who are suffering and having a compassionate heart, not pity, but compassion for them, but accepting and respecting that they're on their path. And you have to respect their path, whether you think you agree with it or not. And then realizing that if you're able to help, you are in service to others with that compassionate heart, but only as much as you're allowed to do, and respect your limits. Always respecting your limits.
I think one of the hardest things for me is, as I become more aware of karma and the laws of the universe and all that kind of stuff, is as much as sometimes I want to tell people the right way or what I think, it's that karma between that person and whatever situation they're going through has nothing to do with me. And that's been very hard for me, is because, I'm like, God, why is it this way? Or why is that happening like that? Or why is this relationship between these two people that way? But that's between them and whatever they worked out before they got here. It has nothing to do with me. So it's interesting to have to kind of separate myself from other people's, I don't want to say destiny, but whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I don't know better, but sometimes you just want to help and it's not for you. You have to just let it play out.
That is the acquisition of wisdom. Sometimes it's just not yours to do. And I see this especially with adults who have children who, they did everything they could for this child, but they came in with some serious flaws or parts of them just not there. And at some point, the parent has to step back, especially when your kid's in their 40s. You step back and you say, this is your experience. You must choose how you wish to handle it. But I'm not responsible for your decisions. And step away. It's like when you have children, you're giving them all of the tools through focus, kindness, and firmness and wisdom. And then you have to step back and if you're fortunate, you get to watch them living their best life. It's wonderful. And do you always agree with everything they do? Of course not. When they ask you, help all you can, but wait until they ask, or be very judicious in what you say. And this is true with friends, coworkers, neighbors. There's a feeling of a lot of push me, pull you anger, in things going on right now. And when I observe someone who is so angry and so frustrated, and they're focusing their anger and rage on something that's so small that if you engage that, then you're just adding kindling to the fire. But if you just listen and nod your head, they don't need you to do more than that. And then you walk away, your friendship is still intact, and maybe that person blew off a little steam, but it's not it's like that famous line on Titanic where, Rose says, it's not up to you to save me, Jack. Well, is it up to you to save everybody? No, it isn't. Sometimes you have to observe, do what you can do, and develop enough wisdom to know
When to back off.
To back off, because it's an excellent question.
It's hard. Oh man, it's hard. And it takes a level of self-awareness, and I work at it and I learn it every single day. And I don't always get it right, but it's important to just kind of, you always say practice detached compassion. I think that goes into this as well. Like you can want to fix it for them and just know that you can't.
That's a good point. You can't fix it for them. This is their experience. When you watch someone going through something, my niece died at the age of 6, and I had to deal with my own grief, and I had to deal with, then I'm helping them with their grief. I can't make this better. I can't change the fact of her death. I can't stop their grief. So, by being a student of karma, I was forced to step back and observe they're going through a karmic experience. My job is to help where I can, but it's not my job to take all their pain away. My job when they ask is to help them understand the grieving process and how to heal to the best of my ability. And that, therefore, enables me to keep a balanced relationship with a family member and allow myself to heal. And sometimes I remember when this happened, you can't help but look at your own children and know how catastrophic this feeling is. I always called my daughter my heart. And one day she said, Mom, your heart is so sad right now. And I feel pain in my heart. Could you come up with another nickname for me, please? And it was so kind the way she said it to me. And she offered me an awareness that I needed to have. But she was kind about it. She didn't want to hurt my feelings. So I came up with something else that was lovely for her. And I apologized. And we had a big hug and another big cry. And she couldn't stop my pain. And she helped me to be more aware of it. So no matter where you are on your spiritual path, you're always in the process of being educated. If you accept the education and you accept it with grace sometimes. When you practice detached compassion, which is actually what my daughter was doing with me, it helps everyone around you. And It stops the drama from constantly impacting. It's like you go behind smash the drama button, you cut the wires, and they can smash it all they want, but it's not impacting you anymore.
Very good. One other thing I wanted to circle back to, and this is, I guess you covered a lot of it. I think that your answer to this might be what we just talked about. But when you were talking about your friend that you did the regression on, and you guys ended up sitting at that council table, and she was saying that, what she learned that day is going to impact her decisions going forward, and even being conscious of how your choices, obviously everybody knows that choices have consequences to them. However, when you think about it past that, what I do in this life is going to affect the next however many lives I have. That's a lot of pressure. That can be a lot of pressure on somebody and on a soul that might just be kind of becoming aware of how all this works. So I guess what advice do you have, or what can you say about that to help alleviate some of that? Because I know for me, I know that you can't tell somebody about their past life, right? So I had a past life regression with you.
Yeah.
And somebody in my life currently was in it, and I couldn't tell them about it because I guess I could if I wanted to accept that, but I know better than to do that. So while it's tempting, I understand the consequences of that choice. And that's just a small example, but a bigger example, I guess, how would you deal with the pressure of having this information and not being able to kind of do anything about it, or be nervous about the choices that you make because you understand the repercussions of it?
It's about taking responsibility and learning to edit what you say. People who just blurt out whatever's right in front of their head.
Right.
And yes, it can be a pressure. But if you are a person who can take a deep breath before you say something, think about what you're going to say.
Or before you act.
Think before you act. And recognize, maybe you need to be, maybe a smart cookie to be able to go, if I say this to this person, you can guarantee they're going to react this way. And you see this with couples who are constantly fighting with each other. They bait each other. They have this codependent relationship where they need the fighting and the drama. And if one person stops that, the other person practically goes through withdrawal. but even that person will begin to change. So if you are beginning your spiritual path and you're learning that, okay, these actions have consequences, and you know, you have an angry homeowner, or you have this happening or this happening, and you want to just lash out, just pull back a little bit, or you want to send that angry email, put it in drafts. Wait 24 hours. Read it again. Sleep on it. Be careful what you're saying or doing, not because, the world's going to come to an end, but because the very act of considering what you're saying is furthering your path. The very moment you say, it's like my friend wanted to tell me all the stuff that's happening, and she was so excited, but she texted me at 9 o'clock last night. If I answered and talked to her, I would be on the phone till 10 o'clock, and I would be so wound up, I wouldn't be able to sleep. Well, if I can't sleep, then I'm not doing a good job with the podcast, and I'm wasting your time and anyone who would listen. And the other clients that I have today, I wouldn't be able to get that done with the clarity I need. So before our podcast, I was able to, I told her, I need to sleep. I will call you first thing in the morning. And I did. And it was real doozy. I'm very glad I waited. So take a breath, step back. What is the greatest good in this moment? And for me, in that moment, it was, I have to rest. And it wasn't an emergency. The world wasn't going to come to an end if we didn't have that phone call. And I needed my mind and body to rest. And that's another thing. When you're on a spiritual path, and sometimes it involves grieving, rest and care for yourself. So, wow, we're at just about an hour here. So, do you have any?
A lot.
We've covered a massive. I think we could do actually another show on reincarnation. There's so much here.
I was gonna say that. I wouldn't be surprised if we did. Honestly, you said a lot of stuff that I'd never even. I mean, I've read a lot of your books and I've done a lot of research on my own, and some of the stuff you said today blew my mind. So I imagine that people's minds are blown as well. So maybe we should save any other.
We don't want to be boring now, do we?
Oh, I don't think that's possible for people like us, especially you. Geez, you've got more info in the tip of your finger than I've got in my whole head right now. Especially about this stuff.
I started out 6 feet tall and now I'm 5'1". So, I've been hammered along the way.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
No, this was great. This was fantastic. And honestly, I would love to do another show about it as well. And because I think that this was a good emphasis on maybe I don't want to say the heavier side of stuff, but it's the side that people don't talk about, especially in the love and light community. Everyone talks about soul contracts and soul families and all this other stuff. Nobody talks about serial killers or coming from the fourth dimension. That's not a very known thing that I think is.
It's not, and I have to be honest, a lot of these concepts are mine, are originally mine. And if they come from someone else, I talk about that too. Because I want people, like I talked about, this is information from the Urantia book, or the Tibetans discuss this or that. Because also, if you're on a spiritual path, I had a woman tell me this. She said, I just listen to spirit and I just know. And I would offer that read, there's a great master, Dr. George King, whose statement is read, learn, and apply. For God's sake, keep studying. Don't ever assume you know it all, or you've got it all down. You're always educating yourself. So, Chloe, I want to thank you for coming today. And I think what we can leave our precious listeners with is, we're all on a spiritual path, and some days we have good days, and some days we don't.
Right. And we're there for each other on the bad days. That's what matters.
Each other on the bad days. And sometimes we just have to take a step back and love ourselves and recognize that it is the compassion of God that we get so many opportunities to grow and change. And so till next time, which maybe we won't wait too long to do another one, because there's so many good questions. Maybe
absolutely.
past life regression stories. That would be fun too.
That would be a good one.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can talk about what happens to your body from your past lives.
I like that one. That's good.
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to reach out to me, contact at ghosthelpers.com reaches me. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you again, Chloe. Hang in there.
Tina.